the trajectory of getting the issue of sextortion or sexual corruption picked up on in Kenya is a real success story, and I think it really showcases the power of the water sector to pick up on an issue that affects other sectors, affects other people, but because of the kind of urgency of the right to water and sanitation, really kind of showcases the power of the water sector to bring everybody together. So we're keen to showcase the journey and to understand how that process from research to advocacy to political engagement can occur, and provide more insight to other partners and sectors who are interested or inspired to work on the issue of sextortion. So I want to start first off just if you can introduce yourselves, share a little bit about the work that you do in Kenya, and talk about how you first became aware of the issue of sextortion in water and sanitation access.
Malesi, over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Malesi Shivaji. I'm the Chief Executive with the Kenya Water and Sanitation Civil Society Network, KEWASNET, which is the umbrella organization for non-state actors working in the sector in Kenya. KEWASNET exists to promote good governance within the water and sanitation sector, and we have been doing this since our formation in the year 2007, and this has predisposed us to various facets of the governance challenge, which within the context of Kenya we have identified to be the single greatest obstacle with regards to the challenge of achieving universal access to water and sanitation, as well as the fulfillment to the rights to water and sanitation for all in the country. And as part of our work around governance, we essentially stumbled on the issue of sextortion as one of the impacts within the informal settlements in particular. But in further investigations, we actually noticed that it transcends much more beyond just the informal settlements, and the level of exposure, particularly to women and girls, is across all areas of vulnerability. So in informal settlements, yes, it is pronounced because of the vulnerabilities, but we also find that when you get into situations, for example, during emergencies and humanitarian situations, you also find it really manifesting quite a lot, and we've been able to get some evidence or some indicators of this happening over time.
And Cyrene, do you want to introduce yourself, and if you want to add anything, particularly if there was a kind of moment or a story where you were doing this kind of, you were working on this work and you said, oh my God, this is actually a really big issue.
Yeah. So I'm Cyrene Malik, Executive Secretary of the African Civil Society Network on Water and Sanitation. And we had, it was actually when I was still in KEWASNET that we did come up, as Malesi mentioned, on the issue of sextortion. And it was really whispers, it was like a whisper, like a rumor, or being discussed in hushed tones. And when we were doing it was under the Human Rights-Based Approach program, and we were doing the power analysis, this is where it had come up. And I think the moment that sort of galvanized us into action was a recognition of our failure, basically, to see that this was actually happening. How did we not see this? It was right under our noses, Rebecca. But it really forced us to reflect and to really think about that what we see, especially Transact walks, when we're doing all this research and when we're doing these programs, did we fail to, is it because it was not under our radar? Is it something that we had not thought about? And yet there it was. That how could those long queues or those women having to leave the house at 4 o'clock in the morning, or the poverty or the situation of women in general not lead to a sextortion even in the water sector? It was already there for fish. We had heard it for pads. Not much was being done, you know. But when it came to water, it was actually, I think it was more in terms of the recognition of our failure and having to do something about it. And I'll never forget, we were with Malaysia. I believe there was a video that had been done. One of the FGDs, actually, it wasn't even a video, was one of the FGDs that were done in Mukuru, where the women were actually talking about it and did not want their names to be recorded or to be, they wanted to remain anonymous. So I think that was really the moment where we were like, okay, at a minimum, we need to talk about it. We know we're going to get serious backlash. There's no doubt about it, because there was a failure to do anything about sextortion in other sectors, let alone the water one. So it was really in terms of now, you know, now what? Yeah, I think it was more in terms of trying to legitimize the issue. And what was helped us was that SIWI had already done something in South Africa and in Colombia, where they had picked up on it. So we managed to legitimize the issue at the global level, and that didn't come without its fair share of criticism, and then bring it back to the national level, which is an approach that sometimes is required. Yeah. I don't know if Malaysia wants to add something to that.
Yeah. I think one of the very difficult things, and just in the context that Sarin has put, why was it not so easy to place or to speak about or to identify? It was largely because it had been so normalized.
Yeah.
It had been made so normal. It's a transgression that had become so commonplace that nobody even thought it was an injustice anymore. And even when we think about it 8 years down the line, it's still the same situation.
Yeah.
Because people still think this cannot happen in water, or if it happens, it is part of the social construct that it can happen. It is transactional in some cases, you know, but it isn't. As Sarin has mentioned, it's clearly a relationship of those who have the power to influence access and those who do not have the means to access the resource. And therefore, that the intersection then is what then people play around with. And the fact that it has been so normalized that it is done, even the transgressors don't even feel that they are doing anything wrong. And that is one of the biggest challenges about this whole story.